Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. Lee here, and welcome to my week in books. This week I read 5 books, and spoiler alert, 3 of them were by Sarah Adams. There's a reason for that. I usually don't like to binge our authors, but I have been doing it a little bit lately. I did it with Abby Jimenez, and I've done it with Sarah Adams, but there was a specific reason for this week's binge, because this week started with Memorial Day. And in honor of the men and women who died in service to our country, I read The Good Soldiers by David Finkel. This was such a moving book, and it was so heavy. I'll let you know what it's about. It was the last chance moment of the war. In January 2007, President George W. Bush announced a new strategy for Iraq. It became known as the Surge. Among those called to carry it out were the young, optimistic Army infantry soldiers of the 216, the battalion nicknamed the Rangers. About to head to a vicious area of Baghdad, they decided the difference would be them. 15 months later, the soldiers returned home, forever changed. Pause. There is like a sequel to this book called Thank You for Your Service. I just got that in last week. It will be a minute before I can read that because it is about the aftermath of war. The chronicle of their tour is gripping, devastating, and deeply illuminating for anyone with an interest in human conflict. This book was so heavy. He goes through the deaths of each of the soldiers that died. There were 14 of them. 14 of them that died on the battlefield or shortly thereafter. And there were a lot more who came home damaged, either physically or emotionally, or both. And that's really what struck me. One, how young these soldiers were, and how pointless it was, I guess. I looked into some of these soldiers who survived. One of them died in 2019. He had been shot in the head. It was the perfect book to read for Memorial Day, to really think about the impact that wars have on people and on both sides of conflicts. And it really, really just a powerful book. Alexa, play the notification.
One new notification from Amazon Shopping. Panda Planner 2025 has arrived. Additionally, you can thank the driver of your most recent delivery.
Girl, that was supposed to be delivered yesterday. Anywho.
Say, thank my driver.
Anywho, sorry, I had to check on that notification. I've been waiting on that planner. It was supposed to come yesterday before 11. It did not. Anywho. So, after The Good Soldiers, which was a good read, but a heavy read, and I really needed something light and fluffy and not serious at all. And so I went with one of the football books I picked up, Football Rom-Coms, The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. And this was the perfect book to read to kind of cleanse my palate of all that darkness. In this one, the friend zone is not the end zone for Bree Camden, who's helplessly in love with her longtime best friend, an extremely hot NFL legend, Nathan Donaldson. The only problem is that she can't admit to her true feelings because he clearly sees her as a best friend with no romantic potential. And the last thing Bree wants is to ruin their relationship. But those abs. Nope. Nothing but good old-fashioned, no touching the sexiest man alive, platonic friendship for Bree. In any case, she has other things to worry about. After a car accident, in her teens, by the way, ended her chance at becoming a professional ballerina, Brie changed paths and now owns her own dance studio, with big dreams to expand it. But one more rent increase could mean the end of the studio entirely. Then, as usual, Nathan comes to the rescue, buying the entire building. A stubborn Brie is not happy about it and decides to rebel with a couple, okay, maybe more than a couple, tequila shots. You know how that's going to end. One viral video later, then her plan backfires as she spills her deepest, darkest secret, the one about Nathan, to a TMZ reporter. One viral video later, the world thinks that Nathan and Brie are the perfect couple. Before they can really talk about her confession, Nathan's publicist proposes a big opportunity, I was itching, that could mean financial security for Brie. The catch? They have to pretend to be in love for 3 whole weeks. I think you know where this is going. And it did. It went exactly where I thought it would go. It went exactly where I wanted it to go. And it was just so light and refreshing. So I couldn't stop there. The follow-up book to the cheat sheet is The Rule Book, it's about one of Nathan's teammates. The publicist makes an appearance in this as well. And a woman named Nora McKenzie's entire career lies in the hand of famous NFL tight end Derek Pender. We may meet Derek in the cheat sheet. He seems to be kind of a player. But Derek is also Nora's extremely hot college ex-boyfriend. She didn't end things as gracefully as she should have, and now it's come back to haunt her because Derek is her first client and as an official full-time sports agent, and he's got a grudge. He's set his sights on a little friendly revenge. If Nora, the first girl ever to break his heart, wants to be his agent, he'll let her be his agent. The plan is simple: make her life miserable. But if Derek knows anything about the woman he once loved, she won't quit easily. And he's right. Instead of giving in, Nora starts a scheme of her own. But then, a wild night in Vegas leads to these two being married. Dun dun dun. And the publicist strikes again. Anywho, both were great. So, if you like a light, fluffy rom-com with very little spice, these are perfect. That's one thing I like about Sarah, is that sometimes she leaves the spice completely off the page, and sometimes she'll let you know, hey, you might want to skim through this chapter. And then, today's Sunday, I finished a book that I had been looking forward to. And I've got to say this. I'm going to start with the positives and try to start and end with the positives. But this one was a bit of a disappointment. I have always, and probably will be as long as I can, been ride or die for Nora Roberts. But the last couple of 4 books or so, I've noticed some things. And some of my disappointment in this is Hidden Nature, by the way, comes in my huge disappointment for the second in a trilogy that's going to wrap up this fall, November, I think, because I was really disappointed with that book because nothing fucking happened. They spent 3 pages gardening. Anywho, I'm not here to bitch about that. I'll start with the positives. There are some things that Nora Roberts is very good at and she has gotten better at over the years. And that is her descriptions. She can really make a world come alive for me. I've learned so much. I've learned about glass blowing. I've learned about cooking. I've learned about remodeling homes. I learned a lot about remodeling homes in this. Too much. This book is 435 pages. They never finished any of the remodels that they started, but you spent a long time on picking out paint swatches, and these are all things that make a world great. But I don't think you'd want to come to my house and listen to me talk about everything I've done to the house or everything I plan to do to the house, or, not this, I'm going to take this siding off and put this on, and I'm going to, I don't know, still don't know enough about remodeling to that. But it's just so much of that. I was okay with the fact of the main character getting shot. Sloane gets shot at the beginning of this. Her rehab took a while. I was fine with that. And then I realized I need to tell you what this book is about before I start bitching. Natural Resources Police Officer Sloane Cooper and her partner had just taken down 3 men preying on hikers in the western Maryland mountains. Driving back, she pulled in at a convenience store and walked right into a robbery in progress. God damn it. One gunshot from a jittery thief was about to change her world. And it did. She gets shot in the chest and then skimmed on the head. After being shocked back to life on the operating table, she has a long recovery ahead. And again, I'm okay with that recovery taking most of the book, or at least half of the book. That was fine. That felt more real than her jumping up the next day, the next chapter, and just being fine and not having any PTSD or anything. Anyway, so she moves back to Heron's Rest, where her family runs a vacation cottage business. As for the boyfriend who dumped her via text while she was in the hospital, good riddance. Sloane may be down, but she's not out. So when a woman vanishes, leaving her car behind in a supermarket parking lot, Sloane searches online for similar cases. She finds them spread across 3 states. Men and women, old and young, the missing seem to have nothing in common, and the abductions keep happening. Luckily, the new man in her life shares her passion for solving this mystery, but it will take every ounce of endurance to confront the darkness at the heart of this bizarre case before Sloane becomes the next victim. And there is something in common with all the individuals. Okay. I figured out what it was pretty early, and that's okay. That did not bother me. What really bothered me was 2 things. One, just the overwhelming amounts of description. You know, I complain in other books about info dumping, where they tell you the whole world all in front. This is not that. This is just, like I said in the other book, 3 pages of gardening. We didn't get that here, because I would have probably noped out and hated myself for it. But it was throughout the book. It just took up so much. The other thing, and here's what I wrote right here. The bad guys, and their guys, well, they're plural, felt incomplete. They almost felt like caricatures to me, that I didn't find them fully fleshed out. I didn't really understand their motivation. Just spelled out on the page, but I didn't feel it. And I just didn't connect with them. With all the detail she spent on remodeling those houses, I wish she would have taken some of that out and built those characters a little more fleshed out. And this is my opinion only. Nora Roberts, I know, can snap back, and I don't mean this as anything hateful. It's just a disappointment to me because I adore her writing, and I expect so much from her. And it's my feelings on the book, which are valid. The ending comes a little fast, and I was okay with that too. All in all, I ended up giving this 3 stars. There are some Nora Roberts books that I absolutely adore, that I have read multiple times, and I feel like I love them for what she does right with the descriptiveness and everything, but I think she's just kind of gone overboard on that, and it saddens me. So, that's enough shade. I'm not intending to throw shade. I'm just expressing my feelings about the book. I'm upset that I feel this way, because I want those other books back in new form. You know, I want that maybe 335 pages or 400 pages and just a little bit less of the descriptiveness. So, finished that early yesterday afternoon, and I was like, I still have time to read another book as long as it's pretty short. And this will close out May for me. So I picked up Sarah Adams again, and this is the first of two. I'm not going to go first of two in the same kind of setting. I'm not going to go straight into that one. I might pick it up later this week, but my first book for June is going to be a book for Pride Month. But I read The Match. This was so cute. I finished it in the evening. So this is set in Charleston, South Carolina. Evie Jones is from a well-to-do family, but she's moved out on her own ever since getting a service dog from Southern Service Paws. Her family does not like that, particularly her mother. So now Evie's living on her own. Evie has epilepsy, and she's able to live on her own because of the service dog, Charlie. He's so cute. So she starts working for Southern Service Paws, and she ends up having to throw a fundraiser and get her parents involved to keep the doors open for the Southern Service Paws. And then she meets at a client consultation, allegedly, Jacob Broden. And there are instant sparks, but they are not, well, they're both. They're a little bit of, a little bit of attraction and a lot of kind of hostility because Jacob's 10-year-old daughter, Sam, who's also recently been diagnosed with epilepsy, has set up the meeting without Jacob's knowledge. She wants a service dog to assist with her epileptic seizures. And he, for some reason, is very against that. I guess because of the expense, and he feels like he's a single father. He feels like he doesn't need, he wants to be able to do it all on his own. He should be able to do it all on his own. And so he sends Evie away, like, really rudely. And then, of course, naturally, his 10-year-old daughter is mad at him and slams the door. His sister is there waiting at the house for them, and she's like, "What's up with that?" And he was like, and Jacob says, "Well, she's just acting out." And the sister, who's everybody in this book, bless him, is smarter than Jacob, because, I mean, it's hard raising a 10-year-old girl, I imagine. And so she's like, "Why don't you find something that makes her happy?" And he's like, maybe I'll get her that service dog after all. But then Evie explained, so he calls Evie, they have another meeting. This one's a lot better. Although, funniest part in here, it's not quite that better. He's in the second meeting, he thinks, "Wow, I had no idea I could be any ruder to this woman than I already have been. Turns out I had more left in the tank than I suspected." And Evie, as a person with epilepsy, explains to him that, yay, that's, of course she's acting out. A, she's 10, and B, her mom has just run off and forgotten her, and C, her whole world has been rocked. So Sam ends up with Daisy, the dog, and there's a happily ever after. Anywho, that is it for my weekend books. I do have one last little segment that I'm saving for folks who stick around this long. And this is a new segment I'm going to think about doing called Someone is Mad About the... Someone on the Internet is Mad. And for this segment, I'm going to talk about The Good Soldiers. I'm doing better about looking at reviews for the most part, but I'm trying not to look at them until after I've finished a book. And that way I can see, what people have said about it, if I'm unhappy with something, sometimes it helps me articulate what I'm unhappy with. I loved The Good Soldiers. Most people liked it too. A lot of people disliked it because it was depressing, but my favorite one, there were two on this. One woman DNF'd it because there was too much cursing. And one other person gave it a 1 star because there was too much cursing. And he was like, "Yeah, I understand there's some in the military, but I think he really just, exaggerated it." And I was like, "Sir, have you never met a soldier or been in the field with a soldier? And you know what? Some people haven't. But what validated my giggling at these comments is later on that week, I went on Apple TV and purchased a documentary that my colleague had recommended called Restrepo, which is about young soldiers in Afghanistan at this forward operating base, combat outpost in Korengal Valley. And they named the cop Restrepo after a soldier who was killed. And I watched this documentary. It's fabulous. Highly recommend it. And all I heard was fuck, 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 fuck. And that did not... The only reason I think it buried into my brain is because I had read these complaints about The Good Soldier. And, I mean, come on, folks. Soldier's curse. I have a pretty foul mouth myself from being around it. But a couple, gosh, maybe 8 years ago, 6 or 8 years ago, I went back to Louisiana to a funeral. I was talking to my cousin, not at the funeral, and I was just like dropping the F-bombs like I normally do, and her eyes got wide, and I was like, oh, I probably need to tone it down a bit. I'm not in Kansas anymore. Anywho, if you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much for sticking with me on my journey. I'll try to remember to keep up the Someone is Mad on the Internet segment if y'all like it. And I will be back tomorrow with with my May reading recap. I did not read as many books this month as normal. Sorry, I hope I don't choke to death here. This month, but that's because I've started to incorporate more nonfiction, like The Good Soldier, into my daily reading, and sometimes that takes 3-4 days, where one evening, 2 days, that's my normal. Anywho, that is all for me. Love to hear from you down in the comments. I do try to respond to everyone. Happy reading!